Good evening and welcome back. With just 3 days left before American voters go to the ballot in an election that many say the outcome will be felt far beyond America's borders. Let's begin with VOA reporter Peter Clottey joining us live from Washington, D.C. to help us understand the mood of the nation. Peter, thank you for joining us tonight. It is just 3 days to what many have said is perhaps the most consequential election in America's recent history. How are the opinion polls tonight looking like on this last weekend before the election?
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for having me this afternoon, my time. I know it's evening your time in Nairobi, but the excitement is palpable. You can cut it with a knife. It's huge. At least 68 million people have voted so far with regards to the early voting. That tells you the excitement and the enthusiasm that people are attaching to this particular contest, because it looks very competitive, 43% more than the last 2020 election, which was 4 years ago. So people are quite enthusiastic and the campaign is intense. A lot of the presidential candidates, at least the major ones, Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump, have been campaigning in the battleground states in very specific areas, trying to drum up the vote, because on the margins, the polls tell us that they are 48 apiece, and they need at least 50% plus one vote in order to capture the presidential seat. So that is the competition we are witnessing at the moment here in Washington and across the country.
All right, and Peter, you mentioned that 68 million Americans have already voted in the early voting. What is the mood of the voters? Are we likely to see the turnout rise significantly on the day of the election? Or are we likely to see issues of voter apathy suppress the numbers altogether?
Well, from what we have seen so far, the prediction is that the enthusiasm is so huge that it's drumming up people to come and vote. There's excitement. People are having fun. But it is consequential in that the campaign strategies from both major parties have intensified their campaign to drive home their point, to make their supporters come out to vote. Some posters I spoke with said there are some individuals who usually do not appear in polls, but they show up to vote. It happened 8 years ago when President Trump was elected, because the polls did not really catch some of his supporters who were under the radar. Now, so posters this year are trying to either project, and they don't want to overcompensate. So they will be wrong this time around. So everybody is being careful, but it looks like from what we have seen so far, the enthusiasm is high. So let's hope to see what the real figures will be on election day on Tuesday.
All right, and of course, it's interesting, you know, with the U.S. election that it's not really about the popular vote. It's more about the electoral college vote. But what strategies, last-minute strategies especially, have we seen both Trump and Kamala employ to woo both first-time voters and the voters in swing states?
Well, you see, I spoke to a pollster this morning, and he was telling me that there are some people who have yet to decide whom to vote for. And he was predicting that they could swing either way because they know the issues, they are drumming up the issues, but there's what we call an October surprise. An October surprise is what news comes up that will able to sway people's minds. So far, it's been pretty smooth, but what strategists you can see them preparing for and implementing are that the 7 key states that they have to win: Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Arizona, North Carolina, Nevada, and Georgia. A lot of these candidates are crisscrossing the area. Sometimes you have former President Trump and Kamala Harris in the same state, literally maybe 2-3 miles apart. That tells you that their strategies are really honing down on specific counties that they think if they are able to drum up support from there, that will clinch them the victory come Tuesday.
All
So
right.
let's see what comes.
So a game of numbers indeed. But let's talk about the issues as we wind up. And so foreign policy has been a core election issue for both candidates, and both of them, of course, with very different policy issues. But where does Africa lie, depending on either outcome? There are those who feel that Africa may have been relegated to a dark corner where no one is really talking about policy regarding Africa. What are your thoughts on that?
You see, a lot of Americans are talking about bread and butter issues. They're talking about inflation. They are talking about gas prices or petroleum prices. The inflation rate has come out small, has dwindled a bit, but people are worried that they cannot afford to pay their rent. They cannot afford to pay their mortgages. And because of the inflation, it's eating into their take-home pays. And that has affected their purchasing power. And people are not too pleased when such things happen. So each candidate is offering different paths to, creating more jobs, creating more pays, increasing pays, and that. So foreign policy is not at the top of the agenda. However, Africans in the diaspora have formed groups and are engaging the major parties, former President Trump's campaign and Kamala Harris' campaign, to tell them that Africa should be a priority. Though a lot of people, when it comes to foreign policy, are concentrated in what is going on in the Middle East, especially the war in Gaza, and in Europe, the war between Russia and Ukraine. But they are saying, look, Russia is in Africa, China is in Africa, Africa has to be a priority. So these are conversations that are being had. Let's see how it pans out.
Absolutely. Peter, many thanks for speaking to NTV Weekend Edition. That is VOA reporter Peter Clottey joining us live from Washington, D.C.